Greetings, programs. Now, I know everyone's saying this movie is trash, and maybe it is, but maybe it isn't. Where do I even start, you guys? I was so excited to make this video because I finally get to talk about Tron and Tron Legacy. But now here we are, and we have to talk about TronAres. Rumor has it that because this movie flopped, Disney isn't going to make any more Tron movies. I can't find any solid word on this. It's just articles and posts saying Disney is expected to shelve Tron or Disney is expected to retire Tron. But honestly, it feels like everyone has something against this movie, myself included, if I'm being honest, but that's not the point. The thing is, I think all of us, or most of us, can agree that there is so much more to explore, and we want more Tron. We wanted Tron Ascension, and let's be real, cult leader Jared Leto is the real problem here. He truly is, and I mean it when I say that. But if we ignore the fact that he's there, the real problem here is that if you go into TronAres comparing the soundtrack to Tron Legacy, or you're squinting at the writing for longer than 5 seconds, then that's where the cracks really start to show. I'm also not saying you're wrong. Hell, I'm guilty of it too. I'm just saying, hear me out first. Ares is a highly sophisticated artificial intelligence program created by tech mogul Julian Dillinger, who is sent from the digital world known as the grid into the real world. I'm gonna leave the synopsis at that and get right into the themes, which, I'm not gonna lie, I thought they were gonna be non-existent. Okay, maybe not non-existent, but I thought the themes were going to be weak or not really explored very well. This was because I saw a video from one of my favorite movie TikTokers, and she flat out said this movie had nothing to say. I really love her takes and analysis on films. She is, in my opinion, pretty spot on, or has me looking at movies differently. So I really thought this movie was going to be barely scratching the surface when it came to the themes. One thing about me though, I'm gonna form my own opinion. So I took her thoughts on the film and I went into this movie just paying a little more attention to the themes and ideas that it brought up. And this movie actually has a lot to say. TronAres explores themes of AI and humanity, control versus choice, mortality, and technology and morality. Does it do these things well? I mean, yeah, look, I think the writing is lacking. I'm gonna say that up front. But TronAres still manages to get these ideas across. If you've been here for a while, then you know I got that life experience, so I get in my feelings when movies touch on life and death, when they emphasize cherishing the time we have left. So of course, we have to talk about mortality and the value of life. TronAres explores the idea that because life is short and fleeting, that is what makes it meaningful. This idea is woven throughout the film, and while I wish the writing had given this idea so much more depth, it's a human idea that stood out to me, especially the way we're reminded that life is valuable because it doesn't last forever. I'm a little all over the place here, but let's talk about what works in this movie, because despite the overall agreement that seems to be happening that this movie is not good, it sucks, or what have you, there are things about this movie that do actually work. Let's talk about the score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, credited as their band 9 Inch Nails. It is the pulse of the movie, adding much needed energy to the vibes of the film. If you're wondering right now if I think this score is better than what Daft Punk did for Tron Legacy, absolutely not. However, just because I like Daft Punk's score better, does that mean 9 Inch Nails doesn't sound good or doesn't go well with Tron? No, two things can be true at once, y'all. I actually really like the almost aggressive, maybe even oppressive sound the score for TronAres has. Like I said, it elevates the whole vibe of the film. Side note, I have to say that the score is very loud, and not like, you guys know I love my movies loud with the theater walls shaking, but I felt like the music was louder than the movie and the dialogue at times. Speaking of the vibes though, let's talk about the visuals, because this movie unsurprisingly looks fantastic. The visual effects are stunning. I'm talking about the grid, the light cycles, some of the camera angles, and I do love me some slow-mo. We all know that Tron aesthetic has always been cool and stylish, so it just felt like coming home to a world you love, you know? The visuals coupled with the blasting soundtrack was so immersive, and they worked so well together, despite the moments where the music was overpowering the dialogue. Wrapping this section up with the acting, and we have to start with Jeff Bridges reprising his role as Kevin Flynn. What an icon. I really love that he's back, and this really is just a few minutes of a cameo, but I'm gonna take what I can get. Jeff Bridges has a great presence, and I love Kevin Flynn's role in this movie. Now we have to talk about the actor that stood out the most to me. Oh, Evan Peters was there too. He played Julian Dillinger. I won't talk about how I just wanted Cillian Murphy back as Ed Dillinger Jr. You know, it's whatever, right? It doesn't even matter. Evan Peters does a fantastic job as the grandson of Ed Dillinger. He plays that ambitious tech guy well, but I wish he had more to work with, but that goes back to the writing that I mentioned earlier. Anywho, back to the actor that stood out the most to me, Jodie Turner-Smith as Athena. What a babe. I love Athena so much, and Jodie really brings that cold, commanding AI presence out in every way, from speech to movement. I love how fierce Athena is. She is relentless, menacing, and beyond all that, I love her character, especially more toward the end of the film, when Jodie really has the opportunity to peel back some of those layers. I wish we had more time like that with the character, but I love what we got. You already know it's not all good, so we're going to get into some criticisms about the movie, and I'll share my thoughts along the way. Critics and audiences have said the film lacks a compelling story and emotional investment, going on to say that the narrative is generic, uninspired, and emotionally empty, with characters that are difficult to care about. Yeah, we're coming in hot, and they're not wrong. If you've been hanging out with me for a while, then you know I love a sibling dynamic in media. It's one of my favorite dynamics to see explored well. Yeah, I didn't care one bit about Eve and her sister Tess. I didn't even care about Ares, but I will say that I thought he was much more interesting toward the end of the film. With Ares, none of it felt earned though, and again, I'm yapping about the writing, which we'll talk about a little bit more, but getting back on topic, I actually like the narrative, even if people thought it was generic or uninspired. I think it's interesting, especially in the context of this world. I just feel like the writing wasn't strong enough, the foundation wasn't there, and it felt like they rushed some of the story beats and character moments just to get to that character development and to the end. Moving on to the plot, critics felt like it centered on a MacGuffin that wasn't engaging, so everything felt tedious rather than a meaningful expansion of the Tron universe. Yeah, I can see that. I don't want to give any spoilers, but it's all about Ares and his mission. His journey from the beginning of the movie to the end. I was fully engaged. Well, mostly engaged because they kept showing Jared Leto's face behind the helmet like a jump scare. Anyway, I was engaged with his story and I thought it was interesting. Now, should we have gotten that meaningful expansion? Absolutely. I saw this more as a standalone story that's like a sidestep to Tron Legacy rather than a real continuation. Whatever they were doing with TronAres is fine by me as long as it eventually gets us one step closer to Sam and Cora's story. Which it might not, but you catch my drift. Circling back to the writing, you already know this was my main issue with the movie, besides Jared Leto. Critics say that the script failed to properly develop characters or create interesting dynamics between them. And I agree 100% when reviewers say that the actors couldn't overcome the shallow writing. I didn't really care for Greta Lee as Eve Kim, and I didn't care for her dynamic with Ares. However, I will say that there was a glimmer of something I really enjoyed, like a banter between them for a moment that sparked and fizzled just as fast. I also love the potential between Ares and Athena. I just wish that contrast was explored so much more. Anyway, with a different cast and stronger writing, if it was Tron Ascension, I'm kidding, or am I think this movie would have done so much better. It really just needed some tweaks here and there, starting with getting rid of Jared Leto. His performance was described as flat and lacking the emotional range needed for his character arc. I will say, I don't like the man. He has had great roles in the past, way in the past, but this just isn't it. I will also say that he is playing an AI, so some of the more stoic, blank, expressionless, empty aspects of his performance is to be expected. He nailed that. However, I don't know, the writing just rushed his arc somewhere in the first act, so everything really fell apart for me. That aside, I can admit that he is just okay in this movie. Would anyone have been better? Yes, but it is what it is, you guys, and I'm not happy about it. Now don't worry, you guys, we are not going to spend the whole video in the critique section, even though we can. I just have a couple more points. Another major criticism was the decision to move the action out of the grid and into the real world. Some felt that it diluted the visual identity, making the world feel smaller and less immersive. Personally, I don't actually mind it. I kind of really love the grid elements coming into the real world. I love seeing light cycles racing down the streets and the chaos that comes from the light ribbons or light trails and the recognizer gliding between skyscrapers. All of that stuff is really cool. but I can agree that it definitely doesn't feel as polished as the grid, but I'm also assuming that was the goal. Lastly, I have to talk about the action for a second. It's not bad. I think there was some really cool moments throughout, but overall, I felt like there was something missing. I can't put my finger on it. I just wanted a little bit more. Not me throwing in a comparison section. You guys, I can't remember the last time we did one of these. If you just want to know how I would rank these movies, TronAres is last, no question about it. I rewatched Tron and Tron Legacy before going to the theater, and Tron still holds up incredibly well. Groundbreaking visuals, the early CGI, the iconic grid, the whole concept. Honestly, I think if I grew up in the 80s, it would probably be my number one. But my number one is Tron Legacy, and you might be thinking that it's just because of Daft Punk. And what if it is? I mean, I'm kidding. But not only is that score one of the best scores, but I love the father-son story. I love the character relationships and dynamics. Tron, Clue, the ISOs, the topics of genocide, and Clue being a total dictator. I'm ranting a little, but watching Tron and Tron Legacy back to back and the massive leap in the visuals, the look of the grid and the CGI is incredible. TronAres is visually spectacular, though Hollywood, y'all have got to do something about the way people's faces look inside helmets. Please. Anyway, it doesn't have the same groundbreaking impact, and maybe that's on me. Maybe I'm being too critical. The biggest swing it took was bringing the digital world to the real world. Again, the light cycles and the recognizer, those kind of elements, I thought it was really awesome. Story-wise, we're taking a sidestep and following Ares and his journey. Speaking of which, I wasn't sure where to put this in, but I think this is a good spot. I saw something on Reddit that piqued my interest. I'm going to leave a link to that thread in the description and leave it at that because, you know, if I start talking about it, we will be here all day. Let's just say Disney could potentially do something really cool if they make another Tron movie. All right, so is TronAres worth your time? I know everyone around you is telling you it's buns, and it is, but it is not all bad. Do I think you should watch this movie? If you want to, yeah. You know that I strive to be honest with you. I was sour about this movie from the jump, all the way back when the plot was first announced. I am always going to be excited about Tron, but the plot and then the cast was announced, I was getting more and more cautious. Now that I'm on the other side of TronAres, do I want all the things? Strong character arcs, emotional depth, and for it to dig deeper on those themes that I mentioned earlier? Absolutely, and we deserved that. But this is still a fine movie. It does what it does well. I was mindlessly entertained eating my popcorn for nearly 2 hours. Do I think the opening needed to rehash a bunch of plot points? No, that's another thing that bothered me, but I digress. The score is great, there's nostalgia that I got excited about, and it's a flashy and visually compelling flick. So, who is going to like TronAres? I can make an argument for and against saying fans of the franchise will like this movie. There are visual and nostalgic callbacks, but is it just nostalgia bait? There's also so many familiar elements that will satisfy, but does it compare? If you're comparing. If you like a movie that's visually engaging minus Jared Leto, then the special effects and action sequences might scratch that itch. If you're more of a casual moviegoer looking for a straightforward action-adventure movie that isn't complex, then TronAres delivers a fine pace with plenty of action, and for a third installment, it's easy to follow. I will also say that my honey liked this movie. He is a much more casual moviegoer, and he really enjoyed the action and the music that he played full blast all the way home. Now, who is not going to like TronAres? Anyone that doesn't like Jared Leto. Okay, that's a little dramatic, but actually not dramatic enough. A bit of a side note here, but if you want to know why we all have issues with Jared Leto, please do your own research. I said cult leader Jared Leto earlier because that's what I call him, but it is somehow so much worse than that. Again, Jared Leto aside, if you want those strong character arcs, narrative depth, or a more original story, you're probably going to be disappointed. Anyone expecting a deep connection to the characters and their journeys will notice how underdeveloped the relationships and motivations feel. And finally, if you want the ambition and philosophical depth that made the previous Tron film so impactful, this one isn't going to check any of those boxes. Basically, TronAres is a little formulaic, it delivers on visuals, music, and nostalgia, and for the right person, this is a genuinely fun and immersive experience. Even if it's last on my list, I think there's enough here for someone to enjoy. Alright programs, a huge thank you for hanging out with me to the end of the episode. If you enjoyed hearing my thoughts on TronAres, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the next video. Last time I talked about The Long Walk, which I absolutely loved. I talked about Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, and the worst part of that movie is that we have to wait for the next part. I also talked about Shin Godzilla over on the podcast, which is coming to YouTube at the end of the month. Check them all out. I will leave links if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're on the podcast, all of those episodes are available now. This movie has audiences split, so you know I want to hear from you. What did you think of TronAres? How would you rank the franchise? Do you think Disney should make another Tron movie? And the question I really am curious about, do you think if they had casted another actor that this movie would have been more successful or at least received better? I saw a screenshot floating around online that said, quote, "You could have had Ryan Gosling. It wasn't going to work. No one asked for this. If you say TronAres is good, we just needed a different actor, you're deluding yourself," unquote. I think Tron Ascension with Sam and Korra was the answer, but Ryan Gosling would have helped for sure, and I agree with Miss Gender in that screenshot that he would have added to the box office. But this movie had more issues than Jared Leto, but he was such a major issue. I'm gonna start rambling, so let me know what you think in the comments, and until next time, spread positivity, be safe, take care of yourself, take breaks from the news, and it is okay to distract yourself. So happy movie watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!